Hi, I'm Elio and I will explain what fasting can do for you and how to apply it to your life. We'll be looking into 3 topics. So first, what is fasting? Then, why you would fast? And finally, I'll give you some simple, practical tips to implement fasting into your life. Well, what is fasting? Fasting is simply not eating or taking in any calories for a certain number of hours. So still drinking water, tea or coffee is fine, but you should avoid other drinks that contain calories. So you could, for example, decide to eat for 6 hours every day and, don't take in any calories for the remaining 18 hours. So now the question is, what happens during fasting? So first of all, your body will use up all of the sugar in your blood. This can be seen in this large, sharp decline in glucose. And once this has declined quite a bit, the glycogen levels in your muscles will also start to decline, as this will also be used as fuel. But as these levels start to run out, your body will have to come up with a different source of energy. And this is where your ketone production comes in. So your liver will start producing ketones. At the same time, it will be burning fat. And, your body will start running on ketones instead of on glucose. So next, why would you do it? Well, fasting comes with a lot of benefits, and I will describe them by dividing these scientifically supported arguments in 4 categories. First, health and longevity. Then, disease prevention and recovery. Then, cognitive performance. And finally, the practical advantages of fasting. So let's start with health and longevity. First of all, fasting improves cardiovascular health. This happens based on 3 findings, namely that fasting improves the strength of the left heart ventricle. Secondly, it improves the flow-mediated vasodilation, so how much your artery widens after it has been restricted, after flow restriction. And this improved flow-mediated vasodilation is actually an excellent predictor of long-term cardiovascular health. And the third point is that fasting lowers your resting heart rate and blood pressure. Next point, fasting increases insulin sensitivity and therefore also reduces insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is how well you can process glucose. Normally, when you eat carbohydrates or protein, insulin is produced, allowing cells in your body to take the glucose out of the bloodstream and use it as fuel. However, when you get large amounts of the insulin every day, your body will not react to it anymore and you will start to develop insulin resistance. So when insulin resistance is present, this function of taking up the glucose out of the blood is severely hampered, causing an overflow of sugar in your blood. So fasting reduces this insulin resistance and therefore also improves insulin sensitivity. Next, fasting simply reduces inflammation. It also produces growth hormone, which causes more growth when you're still growing, of course. Increases muscle strength and causes an effective metabolism. The next point would be autophagy and the epigenome. Fasting stimulates the production of 3 specific proteins, namely mTOR, AMPK and sirtuins. Well, what do these do? mTOR and AMPK allow for autophagy, which is the cells reusing their internal waste, like damaged proteins, to produce useful stuff. So they recycle parts of themselves. This usually occurs after about 3 days of fasting. Sirtuins have been shown to contribute to longevity, and they also do play a key role in autophagy. These proteins can actually restore the epigenome as well. The epigenome is the way in which the DNA in each cell is folded. This folding happens by the binding of proteins to the DNA, and it defines the identity of the cell or the type of cell. So a skin cell will have a different epigenome from a brain cell, which on its turn has a different epigenome than a muscle cell. The epigenome over time can be influenced by environmental factors. Usually, the body is able to recover from these changes, but sometimes the changes to the epigenome last, removing part of the identity of the cell. This identity change is aging. The epigenome is being changed and cells lose their identity. So a muscle cell might become a bit more like a skin cell and a brain cell might become a bit more like a muscle cell, to oversimplify. But this is kind of what happens, and that's obviously not what you want. Fasting can restore the epigenome partly to its original state. And this is fascinating to me, so that's why I wanted to share it. The next point is that fasting burns fat. It also reduces your blood glucose, as we saw a few slides earlier. And fasting allows you to more easily burn fat in the future. You become what's called fat adapted. Finally, fasting lowers LDL cholesterol. And this is the so-called bad cholesterol, but it's not actually bad. Let me explain. LDL cholesterol is produced when arteries are damaged. It fills up the holes in the artery's wall. This helps in the healing process, and your body produces more LDL cholesterol when more arteries are damaged. Just lowering cholesterol when these injuries are present can actually be very harmful, but LDL cholesterol is a sign that something might be wrong. Next to all these health benefits, fasting also reduces the likelihood of a lot of common diseases. Neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's disease, but also cancer, diabetes, Parkinson's disease, and respiratory diseases. And the list goes on. Fasting helps with prevention and recovery of a lot of serious chronic illnesses. Next up is cognitive performance. Fasting increases neurotrophic factors such as BDNF and FNF, where BDNF stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And this causes neurogenesis, which is the generation of new nerve cells, new brain cells. And this causes better memory and brain function. Aside from this, fasting causes steady energy levels. This is not necessarily experienced during fasting, especially when your body is not well adapted yet to using ketones as fuel. But after fasting, your energy levels will be a lot more stable due to the increased stability of glucose levels. And this stability is a consequence of the increased insulin sensitivity, where your body gets rid of excess glucose more easily, leaving you with a higher glucose dips, where the dips of your glucose levels are not as low as they used to be, so you will have more energy in those during those times. Now onto the practical advantages. First of all, you have a lot more free time. This is because you don't eat for a majority of the day or even several days, so this time is not spent on eating food. Second of all, you will experience weight loss. It's very simple, you don't eat food, so there's no possibility to gain weight. Third point, which is a potential point, is an increase in happiness. This is supported by a study of Ramadan fasting, and this could of course also be due to the social impact of Ramadan fasting. But this study showed that at least fasting in Ramadan had quite a significant impact on happiness in participants. So there's no hard evidence for fasting in general, but I have personally experienced happiness due to fasting, so take that as you want. And finally, fasting might decrease stress. This is supported by study number 8, which you can find in the description, just like all the other studies that are linked on the slides. Now, why would you not want to fast? Well, it might be initially difficult. When you're not adapted to fasting yet, fasting can cause fatigue, headaches, and it can cause you to generally not feel too well. You might also have some food cravings, but that's not necessarily a negative point in this sense. So these problems should disappear with time as you get yourself more adjusted to fasting, more comfortable with it. And the other negative side of fasting is that it can decrease your athletic performance. I might discuss this in another video, but for now let's move on. Now onto the practical tips. There's 3 main tips that I want to give you for starting with fasting, mainly using apps, using the right minerals, and slowly building up your fasting. Now onto the apps. There's 2 main apps I would suggest. I believe they're available for both Android and iOS. Firstly is simply the app called Fasting. It's very simple, very useful. It's all you need. It also has a water tracker, so you can keep track of the water you drink, and it has reminders for making sure you drink enough water. And the other app is Zero. Zero also has a very useful quiz on their website to get you into fasting, and it has a blog on zerofasting.com/blog. Over here there's lots of useful information about fasting, so be sure to check it out if you have any questions. Next point is to drink enough water and take minerals. Specifically 2 to 4 grams of salt per day, or about a teaspoon, and about 400 to 600 milligrams of magnesium and about 2 to 5 grams of potassium per day. This especially holds true for extended multiple day fasts. This is crucial, so if you feel tired, nauseous or generally bad, you may simply have not had enough salt. Salt is essential for controlling the water levels in cells, passing on nerve signals and maintaining an acid-base balance. If salt levels become too low, this can even become dangerous. As your body has less salt, the osmolarity outside of your cells drops. This causes the water to move from this extracellular space into your cells, making them swell and eventually burst or die. So this is a video where you can see a cell burst due to the effects of osmosis. When going for a fast longer than 5 days, I recommend you to seek special advice for what supplements you might need. Finally, when you start off with fasting, I recommend to start easy, so prolong your fasting, which you usually already do because you sleep, by a few hours. Maybe fast for 16 hours a day and eat in a window of 8 hours a day, and then slowly increase that to maybe 20 hours of fasting and 4 hours of eating. Once your body has been accommodated to using fat as fuel through intermittent fasting, you can try fasting for multiple days. And this is where the greater benefits of fasting, like autophagy, come into play. And find out what works for you. So how can you easily incorporate fasting into your schedule? Do you have a lunch break at work that is more beneficial to keep into your schedule or that you can easily skip? Just find out what works for you and the rest will follow automatically. So good luck with your fasting journey, and I hope to see you back here sometime soon.